This is the result of defund the police. This is the result of the attack on the police. I'm sorry, this is reality. This was not a case of white supremacy. This was 5 black cops beating a black man to death. They caused the problem, then they complain, we were right the whole time. No, dude, we hired these cops because you called this out. Now look where we are.
That's Tim Pool's commentary on the brutal beating of Tyre Nichols, who died in a hospital 3 days after Memphis police officers beat him to the point where he was in critical condition. Now, what's interesting is he is referencing a post-millennial article while making his commentary, and it's abundantly clear that he didn't even really bother to carefully and critically read the article that he's citing there. I'm gonna go to one more clip and I'll tell you exactly what I'm referring to.
I do believe, and maybe people don't wanna hear it, Tyre Nichols would be alive if he simply got out of the car, said, okay, I'm sorry, okay, yes, sir. Got on his stomach, put his hands behind his back. He didn't. He resisted, he fought, he fled, they chased him, they pinned him down, and they went nuts. I'm not saying these cops are good guys. I am not saying they're justified. I'm saying when you're dealing with a bear, a grizzly bear, do you scream at it and throw rocks at it? Or do you slowly back away while talking? I bet he had drugs on him. I bet he had some kind of drugs on him. Dude, I'm not trying to impugn his honor or integrity, but if you want to come out and you want to be like, he was a skateboarder, I'm going to be like, I'm a skateboarder. I've been skateboarding my whole life. I can tell you this, skateboarders do drugs.
So I just want to be very clear that Tim Pool is 100% speculating on Tyre Nichols having drugs on him. But even if in the future we learn more details and it turns out that he had something on him, does that give the cops the right to beat you to death because you are in possession of narcotics?
Yeah.
I mean, really ask yourselves, okay? Both right wing, left wing, everybody, I don't care what your political affiliation is. Do you want to live in a country and a society that tells you there is state sanctioned murder by cops if they catch you with narcotics?
Which they didn't.
Which they didn't, again, for the billionth time, yes.
So Anna predicted before we started that I would get angry at this story, and it turns out she was right. So I had seen the video of Pool talking about how they asked for this and
that Black Lives Matter asked for this.
Yeah, and then we gave it to them. What did they ask for? Well, they certainly didn't ask for a black guy who was completely innocent to be beaten to death by police. So presumably he is saying, and by the way, like the conservatives are already dumb enough without pretending you're even dumber. Like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. What did they want? He's clearly implying they wanted black cops to be hired. And because black cops were hired, look at the lowered standards got us lower results. And by the way, every right winger now I see on social media, they've already picked up this talking point, is talking about the real problem was lowered standards. So it's really black people's fault. And of course we lowered this. You didn't even know when those cops were hired?
I do.
Thank you.
I know when the cops were hired, and I think that's and that's why I say he didn't even bother to read the Post-Millennial. I think it's a conservative publication, right? But even so, if you carefully read it and critically read it, you'll see that these, like the latest policies that the Memphis Police Department implemented, which did lower the standards, happened after these cops were hired. So let's read a few excerpts from the article that was cited by Tim Pool. Memphis Police Department recruits no longer needed an associate's degree or 54 college credit hours and could just get by with only 5 years of work experience. In 2021 and 2022, please remember these years, they're important. Recruitment was struggling so badly that the department offered $15,000 signing bonuses. Last year, the department also reportedly lowered the fitness requirements, doing away with the timed physical ability test. The department even offered waivers for felons to join the force, according to the New York Post. Fascinating, that's great. Well, these changes wouldn't have had any impact on the cops who beat Tyre Nichols to death because they were hired before the standards were lowered. So let's actually go to another excerpt from the Post-Millennial. According to an NBC News report, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith, these are the cops who beat him, all had been Memphis Police Department officers for just a few years when the fatal beating of the 29-year-old father occurred on January 7th. Okay, so that makes it seem like, oh, maybe they were hired after the standards were lowered, except they specifically reference the cops that were hired the most recently, right? So Bean and Haley in particular have only been on the force since August of 2020.
So that means, by definition, every single one of them was hired before the so-called lowering of the standards.
Let's get even more specific, folks. Let's give you the receipts. Let's give you each individual cop and their actual hire date, okay? Maybe Tim Pool learned something here. Thaddeus Bean, age 24, was hired in August of 2020. Demetrius Haley, age 30, a former corrections officer, was hired in August of 2020. Emmett Martin III, age 30, was hired in March of 2018. Desmond Mills Jr., 32, former jailer in Mississippi and Tennessee, was hired in 2017. And Justin Smith, age 28, was hired in March of 2018. It's almost as if this notion, this narrative, that the lowered standards within the police department leading to this brutal beating and murder really isn't an accurate analysis of what happened here.
And he was talking about defunding the police in other parts of the video. Wait, what part of a $15,000 signing bonus is defunding the police?
Yeah, 100%.
So let me get this right. They poured more money into policing and tried to get people to join it. And then they got folks that weren't involved in this situation at all, and we have no idea if they're good or bad, but we do know they have more money, not less money. So did defund the police win? No, not remotely. Did it win there? No. Did it win nationwide? No. Did we pass a single reform bill, let alone defund the police? Did we even pass a reform bill saying, hey, please do not choke people to death? We actually tried to pass that, and the House did pass it, and the Republicans in the Senate, along with the disgusting conservative Democrats like Manchin, said no way, no way, no way. Cops should be allowed to choke black people to death. Well, you tell me that's not what they voted, because they did vote that. They did vote that, because Republicans are despicable monsters. Okay, so now they turn around and go, oh, you see that? We defunded them by giving them $15,000 extra. And that's why we had these. And guys, the whole thing is so explicitly racist. In the beginning, I was amused by it because it's so over the top. Oh, this is what you wanted. And look at these black officers and what they did. What me? Oh, I'm not racist. You know that to this day, some of the dumbest people on the internet say, no, it's okay. I listen to liberals like Tim Pool.
I know, it's amazing, it's amazing. Okay, just pause for a second.
He's like one of the most racist guys in the country. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay, this is the liberals like Tim Pool.
But what's interesting is how Tim Pool, he has this analysis that on one hand seems to go after the cops. I mean, it is interesting that this, they got hired because of lower standards. Don't think that I'm not aware that their race has something to do with part of the reason why he's even saying that to begin with, even though the facts don't bear it out.
100%.
Facts don't bear it out. So in this one case where you have black cops beat a black man to death, well, Tim wants it both ways, where he goes after both parties. Goes after Nichols for, by the way, just completely smearing him and alleging that he might have had drugs on him, even though there's no evidence to prove that point. And also going after the cops about their qualifications of being hired in the first place.
Yeah, so look, that's actually the part that made me angry when he started going after Tyre Nichols personally. No, I'm not impugning his integrity.
That's exactly what you're doing.
But I'm gonna make up that he's a druggie, because look at him, he's black. No, you look like a stupid druggie who can't get laid and brags about it on the internet, okay? He had no drugs on him. There's literally evidence that he did not have drugs. Those thugs, the cops that went and murdered him, checked everywhere for drugs, including their buddies, who were all sitting there laughing and totally indifferent to his death. They checked and checked and checked to justify their murderous friends, and they found no evidence of drugs. But it doesn't matter. Tim Pool goes, it doesn't matter. So what? He's dead. They murdered him. He's the victim. On the other hand, he's black. Must have been a druggie, okay?
One final thing that I'll mention about this because it's important and it shows you what the desire, the quest for money and funds does to a person. Tim Pool made a name for himself initially as someone who went to cover Occupy Wall Street. I remember that. And I remember, this video exists, I remember talking about it when I hosted a show with Michael Brooks on Jacobin. We showed the video. He was hassled by cops as he was covering Occupy Wall Street. And he was furious. Oh, the cops, the police state, this, that, crying and crying and crying. What a victim, right? Because when there is unjust police behavior that targets people like him, unacceptable. But when you have a very clear case, it's so clear, I mean, you couldn't get clear, of police brutality, police murder, and it affects a black person in Mississippi, I'm sorry, in Tennessee, no, it's totally fine. I mean, we gotta find excuses to both, in a weird way, provide cover for the cops, but then also question whether the cops were qualified, probably because of their skin color.
Not probably, definitely.
Yeah.
Look, if you guys don't know how Tim Pool got tiny bit famous that we bothered to talk about him, he used to come on this show and other shows, left-wing shows, as Anna pointed out, when he would go to Ferguson, etc. And back then he was like, oh, I'm with the people and I'm with.
I don't know about Ferguson, he went to Occupy for sure, yeah.
So I think he did, but you guys can confirm that, etc. right? So he goes and pretends to be a left-winger and pretends to be concerned about the plight of black people, etc. So then as a left-winger starts doing his show, it's totally not popular because he's not an interesting person, he's not an intelligent person. And then he stumbles upon a winning solution for him financially, which is racism. And so he became known as the guy on the left who blames black people for everything. So you would watch his show and just rando, out of nowhere, everything would come back to, it's black people's fault. And then the right wingers love that. They were like, and it's the old Dave Rubin, Jimmy Dore model, right? Oh, I am on the left, but trust me, it's the left's fault for everything, and especially black people, okay? That's Tim's specialty. To be fair to Rubin and Dore, they don't do that particular specialty as much.
Not yet.
Okay, so this guy is a professional whore. The minute he got money out of that, he was like, ooh, never mind being on the left. I mean, I'll still pretend, right? But remember guys, black guy's fault for dying, and the black guy's fault for killing him, but it's not the cops' fault who are mainly white. Cops are awesome, white people are awesome. It's always the left and black people that are at fault. And by the way, he said he resisted. You can watch the video, the New York Times did a count, but you can do your own count. 71 times they gave him contradictory or confusing commands, which were literally impossible to comply with.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Show us your hands as they have his hands in their hands, as they have him like under their control, subdued completely. I mean, it was so clear, even with what the cops were saying, the body camera, the footage, it's all there. You can hear it for yourselves. They are bragging about beating him, looking forward to beating him, bragging about beating him after they beat him, right? Like their comments made it so clear that they had this lust for going after people as viciously and violently as they did. But Tim Pool, this is his job. This is what he does, right? This is what he does. Could you imagine how Tim Pool's audience would react if he had factual, reasonable analysis of that case? I'm pretty sure they wouldn't like it. It would really put his whole operation in jeopardy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, it's more of an indictment of the country than it is of him, because
100%.
Once he went with the spiel of I'm on the left or I'm moderate, but I'm racist, the viewers poured in. And that is super sad as a statement for the country and what works. So look, we built this gigantic network on the idea that people are decent to one another, and it worked. Unfortunately, the quicker and easier route is just say things that are terrible. And there's a significant chunk of the country that will love you for it. So now he has an audience that every day tunes in for that racism under the cover of, oh, we're just being moderates or something. I mean, if you just looked at things factually, you would know that everything is black people's fault. Okay, that's the essence of his show. It's disgusting, and the people who like it are even more questionable.